Assalamualaikum dan salam hormat semua. We are very pleased today to have with us Encik Abdul Halim bin Johar, Persona Head of Digital and Technology Department. And he is here today to share his life experience and values for the aspiration of Persona staff. Without further ado, I present you Encik Abdul Halim.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pertama kali terima kasih Puan Azira kerana menjemput saya untuk berkongsi sedikit pengalaman dan pengetahuan sepanjang pengalaman saya bersama Persona. Diharapkan apa yang saya kongsikan ni boleh dijadikan sebagai panduan mana-mana yang baik untuk diikuti dan juga menjadi satu inspirasi, diharapkan membantu untuk menaikkan atau menjayakan sebarang tanggungjawab yang dipikul di syarikat sekarang.
Terima kasih, Cik.
Okay, Cik nak tengok dulu.
Okay.
Cik Lim, apa khabar?
Baik, alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much for having this sharing session with us. We are so excited. We from Culture Transformation Team, Learning and Culture. We have just started an initiative to have to invite prominent leaders of Persona to share their vision, to share their life experience, working experience, life journey, just so that what you have gone through in life can inspire the rest of the staff, especially in their journey towards their working life as well.
Right.
Because you're being the head of digital technology department, and you've been with Persona for more than 5 years. I'm very certain that your significant projects and work which have benefited Persona so far is enough to show that you are one of those leaders that have successfully inspired your team to achieve so much for Persona. So as such, again we thank you for having this sharing session. Maybe we can begin to share what you have informed us earlier, how you can your life journey can be translated into other people's goals and vision.
Okay. Okay.
Wait. Okay. Dah, ready ya?
Okay.
Wait. 1, 2, 3. Sedang ready. Okay, start.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much to Puan Azira and to PACE for actually organizing this session. Right? It is an honor basically to be part of this so-called session, because I think it's quite important that we as a leader need to showcase our so-called values to the citizens of Persona, because definitely I've been here for the past 5 years plus, and there are a lot of things that actually I have learned, together with the team, of course, because without them, then basically I'm no more, right? So I am quite thankful to be selected for this, and very honoured for me to be able to actually impart some of the things that I've actually collected along the way for the benefits of the Persona citizens moving forward.
Itself is a very interesting path, so maybe you can share with us what you experience and what actually trigger or what actually the elements that actually spur you towards going to that successful path.
Okay. It's a very good question.
Bila you bagi start
Okay, it's a very interesting question because um, I don't consider myself to be quite successful, right? However, I think everybody has their own so-called story in life, who does not, right?
Yes.
One particular thing that I actually would like to share for the benefits of everybody here on the terms of event that basically have significantly changed my life. From that moment on, it has been quite a so-called, I would say I'm quite thankful for the journey that has given to me so far by the Allah. So I will start with one image which I consider to be a significant moment that leads to the day-to-day, that I have, right? Alright.
So you have the image to share with us?
Yeah, I do because I think I do not remember this image for quite some time, but unfortunately I only found it when my late father passed away. So, but the date was so significant because it actually a transition from one phase of the life to another. Cuma because it only happened after the father passed away. So I think now I would like to share how that actually give a lot of meaning to me.
Right. If you don't mind asking, at what age you are at that time?
The picture was taken while I was 19 at that time. I was 19 that time, whereby probably I share the picture first.
Okay.
Alright?
Please.
Okay. So,
Is that you, Cik Halim?
I am.
yeah, that was me.
A very handsome young man, I would say.
That was me way back in 1997. 1997 when I was 19 years old.
Is this where you are being sent abroad for study?
Yes.
Okay.
The picture was taken in Subang Airport. When Subang Airport was still the primary gateway for us to actually fly overseas. I was a government scholars,
JPA?
Alhamdulillah. To go to further my studies in Canada. The best part is actually I flew there right after I actually received my SPM result. After doing some preparatory works in UITM.
Right.
So I did my high school in Canada way back in 1992.
1992. So you are the cream of the crop.
They like to call it that way. Because I have the opportunity to actually continue my studies in Sekolah Bahasa Melayu. I was from Sekolah Sains Tunku Jaafar in Kuala Pilah Negeri Sembilan, where I received quite a good grades for my SPM. That's why I passed the criteria to receive the scholarship from the government. Right. So there I was with my father, right, waiting to fly to Canada.
A very proud father.
Yes, he was very proud that each time when he actually conversed with his friend, he make it a point to actually mention about not only about me but the rest of the children as well. Right. A bit of background about my father: he was a laborer for KTMB. So, I mean, me being in Prasarana actually is some sort of sentimental value as well, because it's a railway family, still working to contribute to the railway industry in Malaysia. And my brother,
Stop nak dengar kerja. Lepas tu dia risau. And your
Cik
brother.
Halim, I finally found persatuan. You know that I also anak KTM
what is it?
and I also JPS scholar. And
Okay.
that's what I know about this gambar. Typical pakai blazer di airport dengan bapak beaming like.
Okay, continue. Jap.
Not really, not really. That leads to another thing that I will discuss later. I was actually the second one to go to overseas. To go overseas. The first one was my late sister. She actually also received scholarship to further her study in the US. The US. But that actually posed an entire dilemma because the expectation was quite high. When you are being not burdened, when you are being tasked to carry that responsibility, right? So everybody is actually quite putting a very high expectation on you. So when I was in the high school was a breeze. High school was a breeze because I think when people talk about Malaysian education system is fail, right? I don't really agree with that notions because I think what the education system has provided is actually very good. When I had the experience to actually go through the Canadian education system, I find it is a bit different, but again it actually our education system prepared us to face the Canadian education system back then. So I was actually doing quite well in high school. In fact, I received a Ontario Scholars certification. I like math, but somehow probably because of the physics that I find myself not motivated enough to actually pursuing my engineering study. So I completed my engineering diploma, right? Then I actually discussed with my sponsor back then. Is it possible for me to pursue other opportunity?
Right.
And I spoke to the counselor in the university. They proposed for me to actually continue my computer studies.
So they proposed.
They proposed.
Right.
And
Alhamdulillah for that. Say, see what we are now.
so computer studies was not that supposedly popular back then. Not many people venturing into computer science back then. But I actually make it a point because there are some similarities from engineering to computer science. Some of the super subjects probably the same. So I was able to complete my degree in computer science within the time actually given to me by JPA.
Right.
So because I cut a lot in terms of the credits, I transfer my credit from engineering to computer science. So it took me 2 years still to complete the degree, but eventually I managed to complete the degree. So the thing is that whole experience really taught me that one, never fear
Fear the failure.
failure, because if let's say I do not try to make an effort to find a way how to resolve the issue, I have to go back. I have to come back to Malaysia, right? And probably think of an alternative from back then. So I was quite grateful to Allah for giving me the opportunity and having these people all around me to help with the so-called alternative that has given me the opportunity to complete still my study in Canada and be able to come back and contribute to the nation building. So that basically I can summarize a very turn of event that significantly makes me view life in a different perspective. Yes.
Yes, I should say so myself. This at the tender age of like 19, 20, 21, you already learn life's hard lessons. Never fear the failure and to always seek a venue to move forward despite the challenges.
Okay, let's start.
So, okay, so if we relate back to at least for Prasarana informed principle, right? One of the things that is very what do you call it? Crucial there
Yes.
is resourcefulness.
Sources.
Yeah, because yes, you have to be resourceful in order to overcome challenges that come along the way. If you are not resourceful enough, then you might not actually exhaust all avenue for you to find an alternative, and eventually you are not able to actually find the optimal solution to actually address your challenges.
Right.
So resourcefulness is, I find it to be one of the critical takeaway from that experience.
Right.
Otherwise, I think I will be coming back and probably continue my study here in Malaysia, and perhaps different life event turn out for me.
Right.
So I take that to be a very great lesson for me,
Right.
at least, so that in my life moving forward, failure is abundance. It's about making a choice in life, right? So you don't have to fear that your choice that you make can lead to a failure result. But again, if you are not making that choice, it's a greater loss for you, basically. So you never know if you never try.
Right.
That has always been another principle of mine. The same thing that I always preach to them: you're not afraid to actually try. You're not afraid that you will fail, because if you do not try, then we never know the final result.
Okay. So it's interesting when you mentioned that never afraid to fail. But then again, your character itself is built by very good values foundation, and you mentioned about this resourcefulness. Is there any way that do you feel that it's actually cultivate in you that resourcefulness, or what it has your parental guidance all this while, or is there that external influence that actually shape your mindset having this resourcefulness values?
Okay.
Takut gigit-gigit tangan. Cik Halim, look at the camera often because you need to talk to your audience.
Correct.
Or maybe dia sebab kat my corner kot. Macam it's like camera in my eye macam like.
Oh, okay. So, daripada sini, this side. Oh,
kat
okay.
beside ni.
Oh.
So kat sini dari Ali sebelah kak. Jadi Cik Ali tengok kat, tapi sebenarnya dia kat kamera.
Oh, okey. Faham.
Nampak dia?
Sekejap, 1, 2, 3.
I think because I actually was away from the family since the beginning. Actually, at 12 years old, I actually masuk
Boarding school.
Boarding school.
Or you you joined boarding school when you are at Form 1.
Right. So when you are in boarding school, of course, when you are being independent from the beginning, right? So it teach you a lot when it comes to certain life values.
Right.
Independent is one thing, resourcefulness is another, and not coming from a well-to-do family also, so you tend to adjust your lifestyle accordingly, because in boarding school you can have all facets of people
Right.
that comes from all sort of background, right?
Right.
So of course eventually when you are in this community, you adopt and adapt.
Adopt and adapt.
Yeah.
I like the concept.
And then from that perspective, it actually teach us a lot about life. So when I have the opportunity to go out to pursue my study in Canada, a lot of that experience actually helped me in going through these challenges.
Right.
How to deal with issues on our own,
Yes.
without getting assistance from the family,
Mm-hmm.
and you tend to be more close to a friend,
Right.
because
Peer,
you have been
peer support.
living
Yeah.
in that mode since at such a young age.
Right.
So in that aspect, I actually quite grateful for that, and I always encourage my children to actually go and live in boarding school.
Right.
So all three of my children are actually attending boarding schools
At young age.
at young age as well. So two of my daughters currently are in Pekan,
Right.
one in Marsan and one in Science Pekan.
Alhamdulillah.
And another, my eldest son, he actually joined boarding school in Cheras, Alam Shah, right? Just completed his matric, right? And soon to fly to UK to pursue his accounting degree.
Right.
So I try to inculcate what I actually experienced in life with them, because myself and my wife also having similar experience. She was actually in MRSM, birthday, and also was a JPE scholars in Canada.
Right.
So we have no issue to allow our children to make choice on their own.
You actually encourage your
Encourage
children.
them to actually make their own choice, because I myself have experienced it, right?
Right.
I don't like engineering because of course they asked me to do it.
Okay.
Is that a right choice, for example, right? So for them, I always encourage to find their own so-called niche areas for them to focus, and then our responsibility is to encourage them to go for it, and not so much of, oh, you have to take this,
Right.
you have to take that kind of thing. And some parents are a bit traditional, right?
Yes,
So
they are.
they want the best for their kids, but we decide not to go through that route.
So then again, it's I believe it has something to do with trust. You trust your children to make the decision.
Yes.
So what makes you have that kind of conviction?
Well, when you have gone through that thing yourself, right? Of course, there are some degrees of uncertainty. You are not confident.
Right.
But again, because go back to the principle that if you don't do it, then you will never know. So you have to have that trust to be able to allow your children to make their own choice. I don't have in the house, I do not really have that strict regulation of cannot do this, you cannot do that, that kind of thing. So my child are able to basically make their own choices, right? And believe me, I even allow my son and my daughter to go to the UK during their school years, so that they are able to basically experience being independent,
being exposure to
Yes.
your culture. So is that same values which actually your parents have cultivated in you when you were young?
Of course, Asian parents, right, very much traditional. I think our generation and their generation is a bit different. But I suppose my school time taught me a lot about that.
Right.
But okay, I can relate another experience when I actually first arrived at the boarding school.
Right.
So right after the parents actually leave the school compound, so we were called by a group of seniors. The first question they asked was, "Do you know why actually your parents sent you?"
Did they ask that?
Yeah.
So how many were you at the
There
time?
were like 5 of us,
Right.
Form 1, and then there were like 10 of them of Form 4. And a
Right.
couple of Form 3 and
Orientation
Form 5.
time.
Orientation time. So everybody was like, I mean, I never see you, then they call you, and then they ask that kind of question. And none of us are able to answer
Right.
the question. So after a while, they sort of like mock you, right? You know why? Because your parent does not love you.
They actually say that.
They actually say
Okay,
that.
wait a minute. You mean to say they actually inject some negative thoughts to
Yeah.
the young minds?
Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, as a parent,
Interesting.
right?
Interesting.
You would think, do you want to actually let your children to undergo similar experience? Of course not, right?
Okay.
But I think, of course, if we look at negatively, of course, I don't want to send my children to
Right.
boarding school. But it actually teaches us lessons on being independent. I suppose, we can debate about teenagers' mentality, right? Why they are doing that kind of thing. As a teenagers back then, maybe I feel sad, and maybe you think that it might be true that they send you because they don't love
Yes.
you. But when you reflect back, right, it actually teach you to become more resilient,
Resilience.
becoming more so-called resilient in facing that kind of daunting,
Right.
right? Because you have no one. You eventually will actually seek the comfort of your
Peers.
circles, peers, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we go through that kind of situation back then.
Right. But then again, you actually have this strong mindset to ward off these negative thoughts.
Mhm. Well, I wouldn't say that it doesn't get to us. It does. It becomes very much something that is pressure, right? You become tense. You become sick, homesick, that kind of thing. But again, our parents is having the high expectation of you.
Right.
So you don't want to actually betray that trust, right? So you just take it in stride,
Right.
and just go through. And alhamdulillah, I went through the 5 years of completing my school years in sekolah sains, and I are able to actually gain a very good opportunity to pursue again my study in Canada. So that whole journey basically something yang mungkin some people mungkin experience similarly, but I take it as a life lesson. Memang banyak yang I belajar when I was in SBP, when I was in Canada.
So I believe you carry with you the hopes of your family.
Yes,
So maknanya hopes dengan goal tu sebenarnya sangat penting
sangat penting.
kan? Macam jadi peninding bila apa-apa negative thoughts and you just move forward.
Yeah, betul. It's exactly true. Otherwise, I think if you are not able to absorb all this pressure, right, then you may not be able to face life.
So do you actually sorry to say how is it actually the values that you inculcate to your children, the upbringing, do you actually share similar methods to inculcate this trust and then challenge and never be afraid to face failure to your team currently?
One of the thing yang because when you actually have gone through a lot of things together with a group of people, right? You look up to them, you appreciate that matter. So something that I actually have been experiencing a lot in my past job as well as now in Barcelona. I actually not a people manager.
What makes you say that?
No, because I was accidentally put into a managerial role.
I mean, after you graduated in the first job that you had.
Before I joined Barcelona, I was in Utusan Melayu, Cibahat.
Alright.
Okay. I coming from a technical background. Of course, you tend to focus on technical.
Right.
You tak nak actually fikir pasal orang.
Okay.
Right.
Not technical person.
But one thing that I value is my so-called interaction with people. Okay. So before I joined Utusan, I was in Shell IT. Shell.
And how long is that?
I was in there for 2 years. Then I got outsourced to AT&T. Then my former boss in Utusan actually called me back.
Right.
He has been a good mentor. So I relate back to the thing that I appreciate the people that I've been working with
Right.
for quite some time. So when he asked me a favor to actually come back, so I actually joined back Utusan. And initially I was not the manager. I was doing technical thing.
Right.
Just so happened that my supervisor actually resigned after 3 months, and the company was contemplating whether to find a replacement for him or to actually let me take over the role of the IT manager.
Right.
So they decided eventually to allow me to lead the department.
Alright.
So that was my first, I would say, break into managerial positions.
Right. Where you have to deal with people management.
Yes.
Right. And what age were you at the time?
I was 30. That was in 2009. 2009.
Right.
30 something.
30 something thing.
And I was the youngest senior managers in Pusat
Right.
back then. So that whole experience actually taught me how to deal with people.
How to deal with people.
How to deal with people, how to manage people.
Were you sent to any trainings to
Fortunately no. Fortunately no. I mean, they just throw me in. I have like 30 plus people under me
Very.
that I
That's
have to manage.
okay.
And being an IT, I think you go anywhere, IT is something that is a back end environment. Right? So people do not know you. If let's say any situation, people just scream to get help and so on.
Right.
It's a tough challenge, But one thing I realized though, because these people depend on you and you depend on them, so you have to actually break that barrier and becoming trusting to each other.
Right.
So I learned a lot through that experience how to actually manage the people expectation, either from the user side or from the team side. I become a bridge between them and the user, because if you allow that user to directly interface with the team, then they become pressured.
Right.
So that is my first venture into managerial role. That experience actually led me here,
Right.
whereby you as a manager, you cannot actually berdiri dengan sendiri. You have to depend on your team,
Okay.
right? Otherwise, nothing will work. I'm telling you the experience that I joined Prasarana without any clear mind. How does situation looks like in Prasarana like that? I went for an interview in Prasarana without a clear understanding that I come for an interview for Prasarana. I did not do any research at all because they told me I cannot disclose the company.
Right. Interesting.
So there I was in KL Hilton, meeting with Cik Mutalib back then dengan Arwah Sazali.
Right.
So, and Arwah Sazali was not talking for 15 minutes. He just sat there and looked at me,
Assessing you, I believe.
assessing me,
Right.
assessing me back then. And it was quite intimidating, because you have someone that just see you talking,
Right.
After 20 minutes, then he start talking.
Right.
And I'm not sure whether you have experience with Arwah Sazali lah. But eventually they agree to allow me to come on board, and I was quite grateful for that. But that whole thing actually put another issue because I tak tahu apa-apa pun pasal this.
Yeah, so you were actually headhunted from
Yes,
Prasarana.
I was headhunted. And only after I comes in, I realised the extent of the issue back then.
Okay.
So memang a lot of challenges lah, especially on people part that I need to manage. I need to actually make the team gel together because there was some serious conflict between the teams
Okay.
back then. Together with the help from Arwah Sazali, I structured a very organised activities to bring this team together.
Okay.
And Alhamdulillah, I think after 8 months,
Alright.
I was able to at least see the people start to trust each other.
Right. So what kind of activities that you had?
Of course, in terms of restructuring the department, you have to see back what is the role that IT is playing within the entire organization.
Right.
Then you chart your organization based on that department.
Okay.
Any redundancies or any overlapping is being trashed out, because that's where the confusion arises.
Right.
People do not know what is their responsibility, what is the demarcation of roles between one another.
So you take it's your responsibility to iron out all these issues
Yes.
yourself.
Even the PGC and Datuk Seri Azmi implemented that you need to resolve this. So that's the first thing that I did.
Right.
That. The second is how to gain the trust of these people.
Interesting.
Because of there are some apparent frictions, I call it frictions between the team, they simply cannot talk to each other.
Right.
They have a very great distrust between each other.
This is evidence.
This is evidence. Right?
And you'll be able to see this at the early onset.
That's the thing. I never asked why I was called on board.
Right.
But when I joined, then no. The thing is that I don't want to have these perceptions before I join.
Which I believe is a good trait because you come with a clear mind.
Yes. Then you can see clearly the issue and are able to articulate the problem and try to actually find a solution to address the issue.
Interesting.
So the next thing is how to get this thing together.
Right.
Right. So a lot of activities. I'm probably because of my experience working in Shell, taught me a lot, especially when it comes to getting the trust from each other, from your teams.
Okay.
The thing is that you need to get them to know each other better, a lot more through interactions.
Okay. Get to know one another.
Yeah, because there was less interaction. I wouldn't say there is no interaction, there was less interaction. That people actually see someone else within even the same department to be an alien.
Okay.
Right?
Understood?
They don't even know that, okay, that this guy is in the same department.
I see.
So I mean, together with Jason Dari, we had this so-called breakfast session every 2 months.
Right. Okay.
This 2 months whereby everybody has to actually come. So I memang work with Kila very much. Kila was helping me quite a lot to organize this thing. So every 2 months we had the breakfast session. We call the chief to come to give talk. We celebrate achievement. We provide update to the so-called people so that they know what is happening, and they are being recognized for achievement that they achieve.
So how do you do this? How do you give recognition within your group?
For one, we celebrate their birthdays.
As
So
simple as
those
that, yes?
birthdays, yeah, I mean that is something that actually contribute quite a lot lah, because when you celebrated something, right?
Yes.
And everybody was there to celebrate together, then they feel appreciative.
A small gesture goes a
Yes.
long way.
Of course, the small thing is like a simple thank you. That one, I mean, for something that is being achieved, then we always actually recognize with a simple thank you, an email, or even mention in the weekly or monthly meetings. So that things is being so-called practiced. And even during the session, we call the CEO, the chief to give talks. Even masa dulu pun Cik Azali was present, to mingle with the team. And they know everybody is, because we are everywhere, we scattered all around Rasa Brands, right?
Right.
So they actually, and the best part was that we had this knowledge sharing session.
Knowledge sharing.
So everybody take turn to present something. So everything will assign someone, and not only to talk about IT, they talk about everything.
Right.
they talk about topics that sometimes unrelated to things that to them. So we had people talk about doing pregnant delivery, assisting pregnancy, delivery at home. We had people talk about their travel trips.
Right. So any topics under
Any
the
topic
sun.
is, then we have people talk about Bitcoin, people talk about also cars maintenance.
Interesting.
So in that sense, it's not so much of actually trying to punish them or trying to make them, but to be able to allow people to see that you have these people within your team,
Right.
so that create more trust. And then of course some other social activities lah. I always like to attend social activities by the team. I joined their trail runs, I went for bowling with them, I played futsal, I joined their trekking to Gunung.
Okay.
So that sort of thing actually help to bond the team better.
Right. Involvement from the leader with the rest of the team.
Because kita tak nak nampak macam kita ada some buffer. Of
Ada.
course, you have to have that buffer, right? But professionally, you kena ada. Otherwise, then your judgment will be clouded with some bias.
Right.
But that does not stop you to be socially involved in activities.
So meaning to say that because you say you're not social person at the early onset of your younger days,
Yeah.
but now you being thrust in a position where you need to be socially involved with people.
Yeah.
So how's that like? That cause of like a turn of event actually made you?
It makes me appreciate them better, because now that I don't have to really like macam some managers, they want to closely monitor their staff. I
And you
like
think
things
that's-
right.
You think that's unhealthy?
I mean, you cannot totally release the responsibility, because that is your so-called responsibility to actually manage your staff. There has to be some sort of monitoring,
Correct.
but then you also need to be able to trust them so that they can actually do things on their own without you tengok belakang.
Or like let's say the boss breathing down the neck.
Yes.
That hinders creativity and
Yes.
motivation.
Exactly.
Right.
So that is how I actually practice my management style here.
Right.
So people like that my direct reports are able to do things on their own without actually coming back to me.
Right.
But for something major, then they will normally actually come back to get and seek advice. And then I always have this weekly meeting to track of everything. The monthly meeting to actually track the progress of our KPI,
Right.
so that we are not slip up in any progress.
So it's not a day-to-day thing.
No, it's a weekly meeting. So I know that things are moving, but I don't really like macam pada set. No, that is not my style.
Right.
So it has been practiced since the beginning, and I think has been progressing well.
Okay. So all these activities which you've introduced and values we have shared, do you actually read a lot of books, to have all these ideas, to implement?
That's one thing that I actually would like to share lah.
Great.
I love book.
Okay.
Any type of books.
Okay.
In fact, it is also things that I inculcate
The reading habit.
a reading habit to my kids.
Family.
So in the house we have a whole stack of book racks
Right.
with all stack of books. And the trick to big bad wolf is
Okay.
a mandatory.
So I take it that is the learning culture which you activities which you implement at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah. So similarly, actually, because if you look at why we do the knowledge sharing, is because of that. We want people to keep and I always encourage them to learn,
Right.
to join any seminars, because from that, then we are able to understand what is going on the technology space.
Right.
So because you keep learning to allow yourself to be able to understand. And I think that is one of the great lessons that I actually get from my parents, because despite of our hardship,
Right.
my parents always give priority to children education.
Children's education is paramount.
Yeah. So I think starting from my sister, okay, everybody get the opportunity to go to university. Probably my elder brother, the second one, they might not be so fortunate, but they are doing quite well now, right? But the remaining akan ada opportunity to go and continue their study. Like myself, my brother, my younger brother, and my two sisters. So everybody is university educated, and my father will make sure that it happen, no matter how hard the situation is.
Maknanya ada kena ada seorang yang penggerak yang make sure education tu is mesti kena pursue sampai ke yang lahat
Yes.
pun kena continue learning.
That's
Yeah.
why I actually myself also do not stop learning. Right? I'm encouraged. Everything tu pretty much something yang mungkin I dah explain lah along the way.
Yes.
I can share you the slide, alright? Some of the things yang I actually pick up along the way during my study, during my professional work, this kind of thing. So, I think, I'm not sure in your perspective whether we have covered enough to be part of this so-called recording session.
I believe you have shared like a vast of knowledge. This is very, very interesting because at every turn of your stages of life tu ada saja that the lesson learned kat situ. Yeah. So which makes I believe if you wish to just go through, because I believe you have actually prepare some key points for the module, kan?
Tapi actually apa yang I ada ni actually very much relate lah about my experience with the team just now, right? How kita actually think about the people around us, you know. What are some of the things that we need to watch out for, you know. What are the example of values that we need to follow, this kind of thing lah. Nothing new. I think pretty much may have covered in the conversation.
Yes, we have. Okay, Alhamdulillah. So just to recap balik what you have shared with us, your rich life experience, life journey contains a number of takeaways which I managed to jot down. The first lesson to never fear the failure. I believe this is of paramount importance because we read in like newspapers bila student tu bila dia biasa sangat dengan sukses tapi bila dalam keadaan adversity they just cannot handle it. Itu yang kita tengok statistik those yang mentally disturbed illness kan, because they just cannot handle failures.
And similarly, I think in workplace also. I mean, just because you rasa you akan fail in your work, you tak nak buat benda tu. We have to shove that mindset.
Chef that mindset. Okay.
So never fear the failure. Walaupun you akan fail dalam you punya kerja, but you still need to do your work, right? Failure is, akan berlaku. Part of life, right? You fail to project you fail, for example. Yes, you akan rasa risau because project you fail. But if you own to that failure, you can see some probably opportunity behind it. Macam mana you nak belajar atau macam mana you nak resolvekan kegagalan. So do not fear failure, even in your life.
Tapi itu memerlukan satu fokus yang betul-betul orang kata apa, solid, and apa ni, positive mindset untuk move forward, betul kan? And atau lagi Cik Halim pernah mention being resourcefulness tu penting. Resourcefulness in the apa ni, surrounding kita punya adversity tu, we must be able to, instead of react to the situation, tapi respond. Tengok apa yang the resources yang kita ada, and just make do with what we have to move forward. Yeah.
Yes.
And you also mentioned this, quite interesting, the values of adopt and adapt. Itu macam apa? One of the module we have yang kita baca ni, actually propose nak buat lah, organizational adaptability untuk the fresh graduates kan. When you mention adopt and adapt ni, betul lah. So it's one of the key values that we need to equip. Maybe you can elaborate on that for the apa ni, yang fresh graduates yang kita apa ni, yang akan join program.
Okay.
What do you have for them?
I think now, yelah, the things that I ambil contoh macam dalam IT, dalam IT, kita tak nak terkongkong dengan mindset yang IT ni apa, right? Because I nampak IT macam is an organisation of its own, right? Kita ada orang dalam IT ni yang buat HR. You as a manager, you kena buat HR. When you do interview, when you manage people, when you plan for your staff in training, those are HR punya matters.
So it's not just delegating work to the staff, yeah?
Delegating work to staff or relying on the actual people dalam organisasi tu untuk run that function, right? Macam kita ada HR, so training kita pass purely on HR to manage. Can be that way because HR is actually executing the function.
Right.
Of course, you know better for your staff, right?
Right.
We do financial in our IT, right? We do not leave it to finance people to do it for us. Right? So we do budgeting, we do procurement, we do a lot of other things, and we do of course IT lah, the normal IT stuff. We do project management, we do. So if you look at the kerangka IT, it's no longer about giving PC to staff. I nak account email.
Typical.
Right.
Yeah.
That is very traditional IT. So now people have to adapt to the new thinking. Then they have to adopt this new arrangement of working, right? So that they become much more
Resilient, to the changes.
valuable to the organization.
Valuable.
Yes. Then for you, I think that is a very very good point for the new people, because satu yang ini yang I tak point out, really know your value. I balik tahun 98 balik Malaysia tahun 98 during the economic crisis back then. Right? So, but after 2 months, I managed to get a job.
After 2 months.
After 2 months, I managed to get a job dekat Arab Nation Merchant Bank. Because you have to know your value, not in terms of whether you are actually ni apa you punya so-called niche value dalam diri you yang membuatkan you very much orang nak. Right? So masa tu I have something that I can offer to Arab Nation. They say they take me. So this is something that I think apa dia dipanggil competitive advantage lah kalau dalam business. Yang these young people have to look inside them and find what is your competitive advantage, what makes you very much different than the rest of the people dalam market. Then you can find your value, then you can actually senang nak move
and then menunjukkan diri dia amongst the masses.
So that is the I participate dalam quite a number of programs lah dekat universiti. I am actually currently working as an industry advisor for SEGI, for Taylor's College.
Currently
for UiTM, UTM, and then for Inti College. So I become advisor to their IT program. So it's the same advice that I always tell them, because every year we produce a lot of graduates. You have to find your competitive advantage so that you stand out among the crowd.
So speaking about this industry advisor, do you actually volunteer yourself, or these universities, colleges actually appoint you?
They actually appoint me to sit as the advisor. So for UTM, Malaysian Japanese Institute of Technology in Semarang, I advise in terms of their master program. So I go through their master program syllabus, whether it actually relevant to industry or not. Right? For SEBI last year, I advised their bachelor in IT program to look into, because they are being audited by QA. So they need to know whether their programs are tuned to the industry requirements.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, and the last point, one of the key points you mentioned about values is integrity. Yes, and it so happened integrity is one of the values of Prasarana. Number one, inform integrity. And we're pleased that you mentioned it. And maybe you just want to say one or two words on integrity again as a before we conclude our session.
I think if you ask me personally, I reiterate back that integrity is one single personality trait that everybody has to have, right? Because without integrity, then nothing else matters. For me, with integrity, then everything will come along just naturally. So that is my view.
Alright, thank you so much, Halim. This has been a very, they say, not really resourceful, but heart-opening, mind-opening session. As you say, it's also we were very blessed because you agreed to have this sharing session, and we are truly honored because it's so evident that your life journey and your working experience contains so much turning points that actually benefit the rest of those who even listen. I mean, even I am inspired by stories, and I sincerely hope that all those who tune in and just who's watching and listening to what you have shared actually take it in them to embrace all these moral stories, life experience, and key takeaways from our sharing session, so that they will benefit their not only their working career and their life ahead. So with that, thank you so much, Halim, and we wish you all the best. And especially in your pursuit of higher education, is doctorate PhD, with all your vast projects in Prasarana and handling your excellently, your IT team. Personally, they have contributed a lot to our team, so we're so grateful to you for even allowing them to be freely interact with us to make that project happen. So what you say actually is the projects implemented in Pasar is actually a manifestation of your values and your style of management.
Thank you for inviting me in this session. It's truly an honor to be able to talk to you and the team, and I hope that whatever that I share can really be an inspiration to everyone. And I'm sorry if ada benda-benda yang I cakap tu is mungkin that is my kelemahan, dan mana yang baik tu always Allah yang beri pengalaman tu kepada saya lah.
Betul sekali. Yang baik tu daripada Allah SWT yang buruk dari kita. Jadi kita akhiri sesi kita dengan tasbih kifarah dan surah Asr supaya Allah memberkati, merahmati sesi kita pada hari ini. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Terima kasih Cik Halim. Assalamualaikum.